This is video 13 of the MBTI series, and today we are covering ESTJ, also known as the executive. And just like every other video in this series, I want to say this clearly before anything else. A personality type is not a rulebook for how someone will always behave. It is a guide. Human behavior shifts depending on upbringing, mental health, stress, hormones, life experiences, and the kind of people someone is surrounded by. So please do not use this as a way to decide if someone is a good or bad person. Use it as a starting point for understanding them better. Now, let me tell you about ESTJ. The letters break down like this. The E is for extroversion. The S is for sensing. The T is for thinking. And the J is for judging. So this is an extroverted, sensing, thinking, judging type. And as an INFJ, I share only one letter with this type, the J. We both prefer structure and closure over open-ended ambiguity. But everything else about how we process the world is quite different, and that gap shows up in some very real ways when these two types interact. The name executive fits this type well. These are people who are built to run things. They are organized, decisive, responsible, and they have a very strong sense of how things should be done and what the standard of quality looks like. They are not the type to sit around waiting for someone else to take charge. They step in, they assess the situation, and they start moving toward a solution. Let me get into the main traits. The first thing most people notice about ESTJs is their confidence. They move through the world with a certainty about how things should work, and they're not shy about making that known. They have a clear internal standard, and they apply it consistently, to themselves and to the people around them. That confidence can be reassuring to the people who work with them, because you always know where you stand and what is expected. The second trait is their love of order and structure. ESTJs are not comfortable in chaos. They need clear processes, defined roles, and established rules. Not because they are rigid people exactly, but because order is genuinely how they make sense of the world. When things are organized and running properly, they feel calm and effective. When things are disorganized or unclear, they become uncomfortable and often step in to fix it. The third trait is their reliability. If an ESTJ takes on a responsibility, they follow through. Period. They do not make commitments casually, and when they make one, they honor it. This makes them some of the most dependable people you will find in any environment, whether that is a workplace, a family, or a community. The fourth trait is their directness. They say what they mean, and they mean what they say. They are not going to dance around a point or soften the truth so much that it loses its meaning. If something is wrong, they will say so. If someone is not performing at the expected standard, they will address it. This directness is one of the things people either really appreciate or really struggle with, depending on their own personality. What are their real strengths? Their ability to lead and organize is probably the most obvious one. ESTJs are natural managers. They understand how to structure a team, assign tasks based on capability, set clear expectations, and hold people accountable. In environments where results matter and things need to get done on time and to a high standard, this type is genuinely valuable. Their consistency is another real strength. They do not change their standards based on how they feel that day. They show up the same way every time, and that predictability creates a sense of stability that the people around them can rely on. Their practicality is also worth naming. ESTJs are not dreamers. They're not interested in ideas that cannot be implemented. They want solutions that actually work in the real world, and they are very good at cutting through the noise and focusing on what is practical and actionable. And their sense of duty is something that drives them to keep going even when things get hard. They take their responsibilities seriously, and that seriousness produces results that more flexible types often cannot match in terms of consistency over time. Now, the weaknesses, and I want to be honest about these. One of the biggest challenges for ESTJs is their difficulty with flexibility. They have a very clear idea of how things should be done, and when someone suggests a different approach, their first response is often skepticism or resistance. This can slow down innovation and frustrate more creative types who are trying to introduce a better way of doing something. They need evidence before they will shift from an established method. Their emotional expression is another real weakness. ESTJs are not naturally warm or emotionally demonstrative. They care about the people in their lives, but that care tends to come out in practical ways rather than emotional ones. They fix things, they provide, they show up. But they are not usually the person who will sit with you and talk about feelings for an hour. And for people who need that kind of emotional connection, this can feel like distance or indifference even when it is not. They can also be quite judgmental toward people who do not meet their standards of responsibility, reliability, or competence. They have high expectations, and when those expectations are not met, they can become visibly critical or dismissive in a way that is genuinely demoralizing. Not everyone operates at their pace or with their level of drive, and a more rigid ESTJ, who does not factor that in, can create environments where people feel like they are constantly falling short. Their tendency to focus on rules and tradition over individual needs is another issue. They respect established systems and tend to believe that those systems exist for good reason. But not every rule is fair, and not every tradition serves everyone equally well. A type that is too attached to the existing structure can sometimes miss the human cost of maintaining it. How do they handle stress? When an ESTJ is under pressure, they tend to lean into control. They work harder. They organize more. They tighten the structure around them. This works well up to a point because their ability to stay focused and functional under pressure is a genuine strength. But if the stress is sustained or comes from a situation they cannot control, the coping mechanism of doubling down on structure can become counterproductive. They can also become more critical and demanding under stress, which creates a difficult environment for the people around them. They are not always aware of how much their stress affects others because they are so focused on the problem in front of them. They recover best when they can identify a clear plan of action, take concrete steps towards solving whatever is wrong, and have some time to step back from social demands and recharge in their own way. How do they handle relationships? In relationships, ESTJs are loyal and dependable. They take their commitments seriously, and they follow through on them consistently. If they say they will be there, they will be there. If they say they will handle something, it gets handled. That kind of reliability is something a lot of people genuinely value in a partner or a close friend. The challenge is that they express care through action rather than through emotional warmth. They fix things, they provide solutions, they manage practical needs. But they may not be as good at simply being emotionally present, at listening without offering advice, at sitting with someone in their pain rather than trying to resolve it. For people who need a lot of emotional connection and verbal affirmation, an ESTJ partner can feel somewhat distant. They also need their relationships to be structured in ways that make sense to them. They value clearly defined roles, mutual responsibility, and the sense that both people are holding up their end. When a relationship feels imbalanced, or when someone is not pulling their weight, they will notice and they will eventually say something about it. How do they manage their social lives? ESTJs are extroverted, so they do enjoy social interaction and they tend to have a reasonably active social life. But their social world is usually built around specific communities, whether that is a professional network, a civic organization, a religious group, or a tight family circle. They are not usually the type who collects hundreds of casual acquaintances. They prefer defined social contexts where the roles and expectations are clear. They are natural hosts and organizers. They're the person who plans the family gathering, makes sure everything is taken care of, and keeps things running smoothly. They find satisfaction in that role, and they are genuinely good at it. What careers suit them? ESTJs tend to thrive in roles that involve leadership, management, and clear accountability. Business management, law, military, government, finance, project management, accounting, law enforcement, and administration are all common fits. They do best in environments where there are clear standards, defined processes, and measurable outcomes. They struggle in environments that are highly unstructured, heavily creative, or where the rules change constantly without clear justification. They need to know what success looks like and how it is measured. Now, types tend to get along well with ESTJs. Types that share their appreciation for structure, reliability, and practical results tend to connect well. ISTJs often make natural matches because they share the same grounded, responsible, results-oriented approach to life. ESFJs can also work well because the social and value-based similarities create real common ground. Types that are very free-spirited, emotionally expressive, or who resist structure and authority tend to find ESTJs the most difficult. The clash between the ESTJ's need for clear expectations and the other type's need for freedom can create real tension that is hard to resolve. Now, from my perspective as an INFJ, the one letter we share is the J, and honestly, that single shared preference is where most of our common ground lives. We both like to have things settled. We both prefer knowing what is happening over constant open-endedness. We both take our commitments seriously. And in a practical, task-focused context, we can work together effectively because we both want things done properly. What I genuinely appreciate about this type is their reliability. When an ESTJ says they will do something, they do it. There is no ambiguity, no forgetting, no drifting. That kind of consistency is something I value deeply, and it is something I do not take for granted. What I find harder is the emotional gap. As an INFJ, I am always reading the emotional layer of a situation alongside the practical one. I am aware of how people are feeling, what is unspoken, what the deeper meaning is beneath what is being said. A more rigid ESTJ type who is purely focused on the practical and the procedural can feel like they are missing something important. Not something I can always articulate clearly, but something I feel is present and matters. The directness can also be a lot for me sometimes. I value honesty, and I appreciate people who say what they mean. But there is a difference between honesty and bluntness without awareness of impact. An ESTJ who delivers feedback without any awareness of how it lands can create situations where the message is technically accurate, but the delivery creates damage that did not need to happen. How can ESTJs grow? Learning to make space for the emotional side of situations is probably the most important area. Not every problem needs an immediate solution. Sometimes people need to feel heard before they are ready to engage with whatever comes next. And ESTJ, who can slow down enough to genuinely listen before moving to action, will be far more effective in their relationships and in leadership. Developing more flexibility around different ways of doing things is also worth working on. The established method is not always the best method. Being open to evidence that a different approach might work better, rather than defaulting to how things have always been done, creates room for real improvement. And developing more awareness of how their communication style lands on different types of people, rather than assuming that everyone receives directness the way they do, makes their relationships significantly better across the board. ESTJs are some of the most capable and dependable people you will meet. They are the ones who keep things running, who follow through when others do not, and who hold a standard that makes the people around them better. The challenge is learning to lead with some warmth alongside the accountability so that the people they care about feel valued and not just managed. Before we close, I want to ask you something. If you are an ESTJ, what do you think people most often misunderstand about you? Or, if you have an ESTJ in your life, what has your experience with them actually been like? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to hear it. Thanks for watching. If this video resonated with you, please consider hitting the subscribe button. I want to be upfront and share that I use this text-to-speech voice to tell my stories because as a full-time ESL teacher, I have to be very careful with my vocal cords. Managing vocal nodules means I have to save my voice for my students, but I did not want that to stop me from sharing these unfiltered thoughts with you. I am Jhonna, and I am currently working toward my goal of 1,000 subscribers so I can finally monetize this channel and turn this passion into a sustainable part of my future. This is my diary of solo living here in the Philippines, and your support, whether through a comment or a sub, helps me keep this channel growing. If you would like to help out even more, you can check out the buy a treat for my pets link in the description. My dogs definitely appreciate the love. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next update. Thank you for being such an important part of this journey. I am Jhonna, and I will see you in the next one.